On October 3, 2011, Apple founder Steve Jobs lay in his home, surrounded by his family. In his final moments, his sister recalled that he seemed to be looking past them into the distance. His final words were simply, "Oh wow, oh wow, oh wow." Jobs wasn't alone in this. Decades earlier, the prolific American inventor Thomas Edison opened his eyes in his final moments and said, "It is very beautiful over there." What exactly are dying people looking at in those final moments? For over 2 millennia, the medical consensus assumed death was a rapid descent into darkness. As the heart stops and oxygen levels fall, the brain was thought to simply fade out, like a light being switched off. Because death is a social taboo, this assumption went mostly unchallenged for centuries. It was a scientific blind spot, until modern technology allowed us to see what actually happens inside the dying mind. In 2023, the University of Michigan published a study in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences that challenged that fade to black theory with clinical data. Researchers monitored 4 comatose patients in the ICU using EEG sensors. With the family's permission, the patients were taken off ventilators, allowing the team to record the brain's activity during a natural death. Doctors expected the brain waves to slow and eventually flatline in synchronization with the heart. But the data showed something different. When the heart stopped, 2 patients experienced a massive surge in gamma brainwaves, spiking between 25 and 100 hertz. These specific waves only appear when a healthy brain performs complex work, like deep dreaming, problem-solving, or intense memory recall. This surge suggests the dying brain enters a state of hyperconscious activity, demanding a closer look at the sequence of those final 7 minutes. Within the first 60 seconds, the heart stops and blood circulation ceases. The brain's primary supply of oxygen is cut off. Deprived of fuel, the brain activates a survival reflex. It begins drawing on its emergency energy reserves, a cellular currency called ATP, to keep its most critical systems running. It doesn't use this remaining energy to sustain the whole organ. Instead, it routes power to a specific hub, the TPO zone. This area is the neurological center for processing dreams, out-of-body experiences, and the thin line between memory and reality. The brain begins to operate exactly like a backup generator during a blackout, sacrificing the rest of the body to power a single screen, for one final, highly intense internal experience. Between minutes 2 and 4, the energy surge hits the hippocampus, the brain's storage for every memory you've ever had. This sudden energy triggers a life review. It isn't a chronological list of events, but a simultaneous, hyper-vivid playback of your most profound emotional moments. Survivors report re-experiencing their lives from a dual perspective, feeling both the joy they once felt and the exact pain they inflicted on others. During this unique phase, time heavily dilates. A single physical second in the hospital room can feel like 30 years of subjective experience to the person inside it. The dying mind loses its grip on linear time, forced into an unfiltered confrontation with its own history. From minutes 4 to 6, thousands of survivors across different cultures report moving through a dark tunnel toward a blinding light, meeting deceased loved ones, and a sense of total peace. One hypothesis suggests this is chemical. The pineal gland may release a massive dose of DMT, a compound capable of creating these exact visionary experiences. But as we enter the final minutes, we encounter vertical NDEs. These are cases where clinically dead patients, after being resuscitated, accurately describe highly specific and unusual actions surgeons performed in the room while the patient's brain was flatlining. While a DMT release can explain internal visions like tunnels or lights, it cannot explain how an unconscious patient with no brain activity can acquire verified knowledge of physical events happening around them. Modern neuroscience is built on the idea that consciousness is a product of an active biological brain. If the brain's activity is measured at 0, the existence of a hyper-real, logically sound experience is medically impossible, according to current theory. This paradox is the most uncomfortable data point in modern medicine, the point where clinical measurement stops and a deeper mystery begins. Interestingly, this clinical timeline parallels Islamic theology, recorded 1400 years ago, long before the invention of the EEG. These ancient accounts describe encounters with beings of light and a review of one's deeds, aligning with the specific visual and emotional reports now being documented in clinical research. Because the brain's final surge forces a re-experience of the emotions we gave to others, the content of that final movie is something we are currently filming every day. Ultimately, the peace or the distress felt in those final 7 minutes is simply the reflection of a lifetime. The quality of that final experience is defined by the narrative we choose to write right now.